percentage is something that I learned during my baking journey. I did not learn baker's percentage as soon as I started making bread. And so I did plenty bad boosts. You know, when I started making bread, I just see a recipe, follow the recipe. When I want to scale it, maybe like to 5, multiply the recipe by 5, I'll just multiply everything the recipe says by 5. And then I'll not get the same results that I used to get when I just followed the exact recipe for maybe just one loaf. And I began to wonder what exactly was causing my problem. That was when I knew that I had a formula issue. I had a baker's percentage challenge. And I'm sure that when I'm speaking about my story, some of you are listening and be like, I think that is why I have the same problem when it comes to making bread. If you have been on this table, don't worry. Today we're going to clear it up. Baker's percentage is a very, very simple formula that just helps you when you want to scale your bread making so that you can make even 200 to 1,000 loaves of bread with the same recipe. Every single time, you're going to get consistent results. So let's get right into it. A simple formula for baker's percentage. So let's just write it out. Baker's percentage. Simple formula for the for baker's percentage is total weight of ingredients all over the total weight of flour. And all of this multiplied by 100. A simple rule in baker's percentage is that flour is always 100%. So every other ingredient is measured against flour. I'm going to explain that in detail as we proceed. But today I'm going to be teaching you two simple types of baker's percentage. We're going to be talking about the one for the baked bread dough and the one for the enriched bread dough. So let's start from simple to complex. For the basic bread dough, what are the simple ingredients used in making basic bread? Remember that in a previous video, I highlighted them. They are simply flour, water, yeast, and salt. Any other ingredient you add beyond these four, you're making an enriched dough, right? So for these four basic ingredients, okay, let's say this is for the basic bread, right? So what's the formula? The standard formula for the baker's percentage for those four ingredients of the basic bread is flour, always 100%, water ranges from between 65 to 75%. I'm going to explain why in detail. Yeast is 1% and salt is 2%. So whenever you are making a basic bread, this is a standard you should follow. Now, what do I mean by water ranges from 65 to 75%? It depends on the kind of bread you're going for. If you're going for a heavier dough, let me explain the water ranges for you properly. So 65% is for a heavy dough. If you're looking for a dough that is heavy, your hydration should be 65%. Now, if you're looking for a balanced dough, 60%. So we're ranging from 60 to 75%, right? So if your dough is going to be heavy, it's 60%. But if you're going for a balanced dough, it ranges between 65 to 70% hydration. Balanced dough. But if you are going for a sticky dough, a wet dough, let me use the word sticky so that I will not confuse you. Then you work between 70 to 75% hydration. Now, this is for a heavy dough. That dough that usually comes out, thick and strong. It's usually soft and chewy, but it's usually heavier because you're working with a 60% hydration. But a balanced dough, a regularly balanced dough, works with a 65 to 70% hydration. And then a sticky dough, especially for more advanced breads like baguettes and sourdough recipes, the dough tends to be more sticky, and so you go for a 70 to 75% hydration. Now let us bring all of this to life. We're talking about percentages here. Now let us bring an example for you to really understand this in detail. I'm going to be using an example for a balanced bread to bring home the point. So look at the percentages here, and I'm going to only change this to the water to the percentage for a balanced bread. I'm going with 70% now. For a balanced bread, this is the recipe. Flour of 1000 grams. So I'm going to write flour as F, 1000 grams. What will be the quantity of water? 70% of 1000 water is 700 grams. Can you see this? And 1% yeast is Y. 1% of 1000 is 10 grams. And 2% of 1000 is what? 20 grams, which gives us our salt. Let me go over this again. This is the baker's percentage for a basic bread. And I explained that when it comes to water, there are usually three types of ranges of texture for the bread. We have the dense dough with a dense texture or a heavy texture. We have the balanced bread dough with a balanced texture, which is what most breads are made with. That is usually a 65 to 70% hydration. And then we have the sticky dough, which is for advanced bread types like sourdough and baguettes. So, working with the balanced dough, I wanted to just bring this example to life. With flour is 100%, and we're working with 1000 grams of flour. Everything else is going to be measured as against this flour. Now, let me show you how I was able to achieve these numbers that we have here. I think I can wipe this off at this point, or let me just go this way. Flour is what? 1000 grams. So, let's say we want to get the quantity of water. Like, we did not know the quantity of water we're supposed to use, right? So we're going to go with 70 all over times 100. So this gives us the exact quantity, like 70% all over the 1000, which is general rule of thumb for the flour, because we're measuring everything against flour. So the flour is what? 1000 grams. The percentage of water should be 70%. Multiplying that by 100 gives us 700 grams. Now we have done that for water. Let's say you want to measure for yeast. You already know the flour is 1000 grams. Now, you want to measure how much yeast should you use. I know it's 1% of yeast. All you just need to do is remove the 70 and write 1% for the yeast. Divide 1% by 1000, multiply by 100, and then you get 10 grams for your yeast. At this point, are there any questions? Can I go further? Can I continue? Can I continue? Can I continue? Can I continue? All right. So let's say you want to now measure for salt. We know that this percentage for salt is 2%, right? All you need to do at this point is to say, okay, 2 divided by 1,000 multiplied by 100 gives you 20 grams for salt. So this is the general guide. If you already know what quantity of flour you have, even if you want to use 500 grams of flour, so let's do it with 500 grams of flour. This is how the formula is going to be. Let's say we only know what our flour is, 500 grams of flour. I want to get the water we are going to use, the yeast we are going to use, and the salt we are going to use. All you need to do at this point is to change 1,000 to 500 grams. You have 500 grams of flour here, and you want to now multiply it, and you want to get the quantity of water you're going to use. What you're just simply going to do is to say, okay, water is supposed to be 70, right? Divided by this, and it gives you 350 grams of water. That is what the recipe calls. So your water now will be what? 350 grams of water. At this point, I beg your pardon. So I'm just going to go over this again for 500 grams of flour. Sorry, I was putting the flour here. I should have put it here because we're actually multiplying it against flour. I just remember that there was something off. I realized that it was not actually correct. Sorry about that. I just switched the formulas. So what you're just going to do is you're going to divide 70% over 100 and multiply it by your 500 grams of flour. Now quickly do that. Use your calculators and let me see if you get 350 grams. Are we on track? Are we on track? Are we on track now? Are we on track? I hope I'm not leaving anybody behind. Are we on track? Good, 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 good. So the flour is going to be here. We're measuring against flour and we are dividing by 100 because it's a percentage. And then we are going to carry the percentage of the baker's percentage up for the particular parameter of measuring. Now I'm measuring water. So if you have 500 grams of flour, as I said earlier, water is 70% because we're doing a balanced bread dough. So 70 divided by 100 multiplied by 500 grams gives us 350 grams of water. Are you with me now? Are we back on track? All right. So let's say we want to measure for yeast now. For yeast, what we need to do is change this 70 to 1. So 1 divided by 100 times 500 grams of flour gives us 5 grams of yeast. Let's do the same for salt. Salt is 2% according to the baker's percentage. These parameters, they don't change. They are standards. Or the only thing that changes is the flour. So any amount of flour you're using should change. But you see, these two parameters are constant. So we have 2 grams of salt divided by 100, multiplied by the quantity of flour you're using for the recipe, which is 500 grams of flour, and then it gives you 10 grams of salt. At this point, I'm ready to take questions before we move over to the enriched dough. Questions, questions, questions. Hit me with your questions. Question time. No questions. No questions. No questions. That means everybody understands. All right, so let's move to the enriched dough. The enriched dough is a little bit more complicated, but do not be scared. I got you. Now, for an enriched dough, we're going to get the formula for an enriched dough with a balanced bread. We're still doing balanced bread because balanced bread is quite generic. Most people just work with balanced bread, right? So, an enriched dough. An enriched dough is a dough that does not have just the four basic ingredients. It has more. So it contains flour, which is always 100%. Water for the balanced dough is 70%. Salt, still 2%. Yeast, still 1%. Now, our milk, egg, and sugar. Last but not least, we have oil. Now, for this particular recipe, we are going to be going with 15% for milk, 15% for sugar, and 8% for oil. Always keep these parameters in mind. You can actually tweak it sometimes according to your preference, but please do not joke with the first four. For an enriched dough, you can just do what you want sometimes, but a word of caution here. The liquid ingredients like egg have a percentage of water in them. So it can be tricky. When you're having 10% of egg and 15% of milk, all of them still factor in as water because they are still hydration. But also bear in mind that it is not all of your liquid milk that is water. It is not all of the egg that is water. So how many percent of this egg becomes water? How many percent of the milk is water? 85% of milk is water. Liquid milk is water. General rule of thumb, right? And 75% of the egg is water. So before you even proceed with tampering with anything in this recipe, after you have this baker's percentage, you have to work around what you're going to turn your water into. Now, because water is usually 70%, what are you going to do at this point? You're going to come back to this formula and say, okay, I want to get my hydration, my exact hydration for water. So you're going to convert this let me change this pen. I think this one is better. Okay. All right. So we have 15 times 0.85. And our egg is 10% times 0.75. So let's call this milk and let's call this egg. Right. So whatever you get here, let us do the math and let's get the exact number. That gives us 12.75. 10 multiplied by 0.75 is what? 7.5. So let's add this together. We have 20.25. 20.25. How many percent of water are we adding to this recipe? 70%. So you're going to deduct 20.25 from 70% to know the exact quantity of water you're going to need for this recipe. So now we're going to bring down our water here. And we'll say, okay, since the percentage of egg I have and milk is 20.25, I'll just deduct 70% from 20.25%. Sorry, 20% from 70% gives me what? 70 minus 20.25%. That gives me 49.75%. This is now the quantity of water I'm going to add, or just say 50%. Approximate it to 50% water. So you see, because you're adding all these ones now, your water is no longer going to be 70, your water will be 50. Bear in mind that we're adding milk and egg. So now let us do a recipe. Let us generate a recipe for our enriched dough. At this point, are there any questions? No questions. All right, let's move. Do we understand? I want to see comments. Do you understand? Yes, no, maybe? Feel free to engage. No questions. No comments. All right, so let's keep moving. So which one do I swipe for this example I want to give? All right, let me just wipe this off so that we can, I hope you have it in your heads or you have taken it down. So let's say we have a recipe that the flour is 1,000 grams. Flour is 1,000 grams. Our water is how many grams now? Supposed to be 50 grams, right? Sorry, 50%. So now how do we now get the metrics for the particular gram of water? Remember, what we need to do is to say, okay, 50 divided by 100 times 1,000. That gives us 500 grams, right? Our water is 500 grams. We want to get our quantity of milk. Our milk is 12.75 grams. So instead of 50, we're going to remove, we're going to clean up this 50 and write 12.75 to get the exact quantity of milk we're putting for this recipe. Please do the math. 12.75 divided by 100 times 1,000. Okay, good. We're going to be adding 125.7, so 127.5 grams of milk to this recipe. Now let's quickly run it for egg. What quantity of egg do we need for this recipe? I'm thinking it's 100 grams of egg. So all you just need to do, okay, it's not even up to. So all you just need to do is write 7.5 or 75 grams of egg. 7.5 divided by 100 times 1,000. That gives us 75 grams, if I'm not mistaken. Good. 75 grams of egg. So you see how this is coming together. This is about one large size of egg. If you have a very large egg, one large egg gives you 75 grams. So let's keep moving. Now, sugar. Sugar, 15% works for sugar. So 15 here divided by 100 times 1,000 gives us 150 grams of sugar. And then for our oil, oil is 8%. So let's write 8 here. Divided by 100 times 1,000 gives us about 80 grams of oil or fat. Yeah. And then we have our salt. Salt is usually 2%. So having 2 divided by 100 times 1,000, that gives us 20 grams of salt. And for our yeast, we have 1 gram of yeast divided by 100 times 1000. That gives us 10 grams of yeast. So that's about it. Just have this at the front of your minds. If your flour is 500 grams, all you need to do is change this and multiply all the parameters against 500 grams and you get your baker's percentage. This helps you get consistent baking results every single time you bake. You don't have to start to do any serious calculation again. All you need to know is your flour and all you need to know are the percentages. So let me go over it again from the very beginning. We started establishing the fact that baker's percentage is a simple formula that measures every parameter in your bread against flour. Baker's percentage measures the total weight of the ingredients against the total weight of flour multiplied by 100. This is what baker's percentage means. So we started and we established the fact that if you want to make a basic bread, there are only 4 parameters you measure: flour, water, yeast, and salt. And the basic for a balanced bread, the water is usually 70%, always 100%. Salt is 2%, and then yeast is 1%. So when you know what your flour is, you can always insert them so that you can convert them into a particular gram, and then you work with this particular conversion. This is for converting to grams. This is for converting it to grams. This is the baker's percentage formula. But this is when you want to convert it to grams to get the exact weight. This is what you do. And then we establish the fact that for an enriched dough, you have to add, because an enriched dough adds other things like milk, egg, oil, sugar, honey, whatever. So we had a guide. You don't really have to be strict sometimes about the quantity of milk and egg, but you have to know that they are hydration. So when you are adding milk and egg, check your water. Make sure you're able to identify them and know how many percent the milk and the egg is, and deduct it from the total water percentage before you put it into your bread. If not, your bread will be sticky. It has happened to me before. I don't want it to happen to you. You see, I learned bread making the hard way. And I want to make sure that as many people as I can help, as many people as I can reach with my message, do not have to learn bread making the way I learned it. It was not funny. I'm laughing about it now, but it actually ran into millions of naira of losses for me to get to this point. And I want to spare you all of that. You don't have to make such mistakes. All you need to do is pay attention and listen. If you have listened up to this point, please kindly click the subscribe button. And make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend that there is someone out here who is not gatekeeping. I'm sharing everything I have learned over the past 5 years or so about bread making, and I want to share it with you for free. All you need to do is make yourself available every evening so that we can discuss things like this. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Now, while you are thinking about the questions you want to ask, we have talked about ratio. We have talked about science. We have been mathematical and empirical. Now, let us also talk about 5 controls you always need to have in front of your mind whenever you are baking bread. It's very important that you do not forget that there are 5 basic things that control bread making. Do not ever forget them. When you're baking, check 5 things. First of all, check your water. Water is hydration. Check water. Always check water. Water helps to bind your ingredients together. Just see water as life. It is water that helps your gluten structure to form. We talked about gluten in detail yesterday. Without water, gluten structure will not form. Without water, your flour is just flour, right? So always check your water. If your bread is too dense, it is a water problem. Increase your hydration. If your bread is too sticky, it is still a water problem. Reduce your hydration. Always check your water. The second check you should always bear in mind is yeast. Yeast is speed. Yeast helps to increase the rate at which your bread rises. If your bread is not rising well, please, it might be that your yeast is inactive or dead, or it might be that the yeast is not sufficient for the dough you are making. That actually brings us back to the baker's percentage. Make sure that your yeast is 1% of the bread you are making, because yeast is speed. Another parameter to check is salt. Salt does not exist just for taste alone. Salt helps balance the reaction of yeast. It slows it down. So make sure that you always check to make sure that you have salt in your bread. Do not ever skip on salt. It's a very important parameter to measure. Temperature is the environment. Is the environment where your bread exists. If the temperature is too cold, what happens to your bread? It doesn't proof properly. It doesn't rise properly. And if the environment is too hot, of course, it might actually kill the yeast. That is when you pour hot water, because we say yeast like warmth. Now you can carry boiling water and pour inside your bread. The yeast is going to die. The bread will not rise. It's like this. So always make sure that you check your temperature. Sometimes it's not even just about the kind of water you pour into the bread. It might be where you keep the bread to rise. You should not keep your bread to rise in a place that is too cold. When the weather is cold, make sure that you create for the bread to rise, because temperature is the environment that enables the yeast activity. And then fifth, but not least, is time. Time controls everything. In fact, without time, we will not be here today talking about bread, because time is one of the most important processes in dough formation. From mixing to kneading, forming the gluten structure, to letting your dough rise, and of course baking. So these 5 controls have to be on point. You have to clock it every single time. And when you clock it and you get it right, of course, your bread is going to turn out well. So baker's percentage has been discussed in detail. If you have any questions, kindly let me know in the comment section. If you want more clarity, shoot, I'm always here for you. And this is how we come to the end of today's episode. I'm so happy to be doing this with you today. Make sure you look forward to our class for tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to be another engaging and enlightening topic that we'll be discussing. For now, it's good night, and make sure you have a lovely night's rest. See you tomorrow. Bye.